यार हर संडे की तरह हम आपके साथ जुड़ चुके हैं। आप जानते ही हैं कि हम अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंकिंग के बारे में कोई हर संडे को एक नया टॉपिक लेके आते हैं और जिससे आपको सबसे ज़्यादा फ़ायदा हो, आपको बैंक चलाने में सहूलियत मिले। दैट इज़ द ऑब्जेक्टिव। Every Sunday we try to cover up various topics which are affecting the urban cooperative banking industry, and that's how we have been sharing the knowledge with the members of the urban cooperative banking sector. Today I am going to talk in general about the overall problems or challenges which are being faced by the urban cooperative banking sector, and these problems all of you are aware. My motto or my aim is to ensure that we discuss the problem and try to cover up the solutions around it. This solution will definitely help you in ensuring that your bank is totally compliant. Over the past 2 or 3 years, you must have observed that the Reserve Bank of India has come down heavily on the urban cooperative banking sector. That is the normal feeling, but that is not true. Why it is not true? It is not only the urban cooperative banking industry, but also the NBFCs and the commercial banks, which are also being penalized for several things which they are not doing or whatever that they are not following in terms of the regulatory guidance as such. So the first thing first, मुझे लगता है कि रिज़र्व बैंक का जो रुख है अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंकिंग की तरफ, वो ज़्यादा स्ट्रिक्ट हो रहा है, ज़्यादा फोकस ऑन कंप्लायंस हो रहा है, ज़्यादा उनका फोकस जो रेगुलेशन में है, वो रेगुलेशन वो अलग अलग तरह के ला रहे हैं। जैसे कि आपने सुना होगा कि उन्होंने ऑलरेडी पूरे अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंकिंग का जो क्लासिफिकेशन है, जिसको वर्गीकरण कहते हैं, 4 क्लास में क्या है, T1, T2, T3 and T4. Couple of regulations they have not introduced for the T1 and T2 banks, but there are majorly several regulatory compliances that which they have introduced for all the banks, like the fraud risk management circular, which was issued in July 2024, is applicable to all the banks. But within that, there are a couple of things which are not applicable to T1 and T2 banks, like the early warning systems or signals method. In that very particular circular, they don't want T1, T2 to make use of it, or rather they have left it open to them. So any T1 or T2 bank can think of ensuring that they also follow the guidance which is given in the in that particular circular. There is one more circular, rather kind of guidance note issued by Reserve Bank of India, which talks about the operational risk management, and they want banks to apply the systems and procedures to have the operational risk management in place. They want banks to evaluate the gaps in the operations risk which their bank is having, and therefore that is one more circular which is applicable for T3 and T4 banks. But somewhere some references for T1 and T2 banks are also being made. Secondly, you might have heard that you might be aware that the compliance and the compliance risk management has been made applicable. Compliance management above 100 crores deposit has already been made applicable, and therefore the regulatory compliances are growing. Forget about the concept where under the Reserve Bank of India tells you to give you the information or data by the end of day. That is the kind of pressure that they have built over a period of time. Their only understanding is that your MIS should be such a strong in a particular way that you are in a position to supply any information or data that the Reserve Bank of India is asking. So the regulatory compliances is something which is growing strongly, and that's where the focus is on the urban cooperative banks. And believe it or not, you might have heard of the College of Supervision, which was started 3-4 years ago by Reserve Bank of India. And in that particular college, there are professionals who are training the inspectors of Reserve Bank of India. What is happening then? The inspectors of Reserve Bank of India are getting proper training, proper learning as to how to evaluate a balance sheet, how to identify the loopholes, how to focus on what banks are doing, especially in terms of accounting standards. That's what is happening, and therefore This is one more challenge which the urban cooperative banks has to handle properly, create resources, deploy them, and keep itself on the toes. Second challenge which is currently felt is that almost the entire urban cooperative banking sector is not facing any CRAR issue. So the capital adequacy is not much of a problem, major problem. Even the performance of non-performing assets or the numbers of non-performing performing assets in the industry have come down substantially, and in fact compared with the other banking peers like commercial banks or private sector banks, the urban cooperative banks have fared well. But then it is being said that Nazar hati, Durgatna ghati. What it means? You have to keep a tab on all these developments. You have to control the entire scenario in such a way that your NPAs, the asset quality numbers and all such things are maintained properly, and you also have to grow. And therefore, there is a recent paper that is floated by Reserve Bank of India to find ways and means to fund the urban cooperative banks. Why the funding is necessary? The funding is necessary to only to ensure that you comply with capital adequacy norms. At the same time, you are in a position to grow. अगर आपको ग्रो करना है तो विदाउट कैपिटल आप ग्रो नहीं कर सकते हो, तो कैपिटल की ज़रूरत हमें देखनी है. There is one more thing that is happening, and probably I feel that this is a particular area where T1 and T2 banks could find little difficulties. I have no issues in respect of T4 banks which are already extremely advanced. I am talking of the digital onslaught that is coming on the sector. The banks are now more required to handle the digital transformation that is happening in the industry. There have been a lot of people who have been talking a lot about AI being introduced into the banking, but I have not come across a major product where AI is actually being used. AI is to my mind, AI should first be used by banks in their back office operations like data extractions and Excel management. That's an area where banks can focus very strongly and ensure that the digital transformation, they keep the pace with the things which are changing. If your technology is outdated, try to change it. Try to change it. You spend some money on technology, your customer will not go elsewhere. You need to have all the updated facilities, and if you are not having those updated facilities which the NPCI is giving, probably you will lag behind, and that will be a burden on your growth. One of the major issues which I find in the sector that is bothering is the banks are not getting proper MDs or CEOs, and now therefore there is a flavor that the experience is being picked up from the commercial banks. The MDs and CEOs of the urban cooperative banks are typically now being picked up from the public sector banks. It is good as far as banking is concerned, there is no issue, but the problem lies in their adaptability at this age or stage, because they always will come after superannuation. When they come after superannuation, there is a major problem in terms of understanding how the cooperative banks function. With that gap, what is happening is that these superly brilliant personnel from the public sector bank at times are misfit, because you may be good in banking, you have to carry people with you. The moment you are not in a position to do that, it becomes difficult, and therefore there is a leadership crisis in terms of administration. As far as the board is concerned, there is no crisis. Why there is no crisis? Because the members elect the board. So members have to decide who would be the member of the board. There is normally an election, and there is a curious anomaly that exists. Like Reserve Bank of India or the BR Act says that the section 10 which talks about, I may be wrong about section 10B or section 10C, they want at least 51% of the people on the board who have professional knowledge. They are not saying that they should be having degree. They should have professional knowledge. When you say that they should have professional knowledge, it means that 12वीं का बंदा भी अगर अकाउंटेंसी में काम करता है, अच्छा एक्सपीरियंस है, तो वो प्रोफेशनल हो सकता है. क्या ये सच है? क्या ये तुम कर सकते हो? No, it's not possible. So as a practical banker, my advice will be to ensure that you have a proper person who is qualified in that particular solution. Although Act doesn't say so, this is my advice to you. And then secondly, the leadership crisis at the banks where the people are being picked up from amongst the members. So the person that is chairman or vice chairman, if he is not aware of what is happening in the banking, it creates difficulties. And therefore you will find that the Reserve Bank of India in recent times has ensured that they are looking for a person who has a banking experience in the board. How democratically you will be able to do that? Tough to say. Because every Tom, Dick, Harry can apply for being a director of a company, and then what happens is, irrespective of their qualifications, they are elected. Because typically the elections of these banks are conducted either by the state government returning officer or the election rules framed under the state law, which does not make a reference in the selection of the candidate or the nomination of the candidate, because there is no provision. And then the banks at times find themselves at their wits' end to ensure that they have 51% of the members who are having the knowledge which are covered under the BR Act. This is a big issue that is coming up, and now Reserve Bank of India is asking banks to amend their bylaws. My question is that you amend the bylaws which is framed on the basis of model bylaws of a particular state. How can you have a bylaw which is beyond model bylaw? Second question is whether any provision which is not in the State Cooperative Act, and if you amend, whether the registrar will approve it. So what is required? The Reserve Bank of India under the 2004 the agreement with the respective state government should insist that these banks should amend the bylaws whereunder the constitution which is created in the bylaws of each bank is properly amended to ensure that it is in sync with the BR Act. That has not happened, and that is a major issue under governance and leadership. I am not talking about the difficulties or the issues which these banks face. And then the challenge that is coming up is the new generation banks which are coming up. Recently there was a news that the Reserve Bank of India intends to give license to some private sector banks, allowing small finance bank to do all commercial banking activity. That's a competition which I feel is coming from the entire banking fraternity for the urban cooperative banks. Secondly, as a cooperative bank, why the customers stay with you? Because the customer knows your chairman. You can call chairman and sit before and solve the problems. When chairman is so accessible, the customer's expectations are always high. You may not have high expectation from any of the public sector bank, but you will have it from the cooperative banks, because that's the base, that's the foundation of their banking business. Although they are a society, but they are a bank. And why they are successful? It is principally because of this, they are highly successful. One more issue which I find is that I already spoken about the technology and its challenges. People who have a good technical background do not stay with the urban cooperative bank. Retaining them is becoming extremely difficult, and at times I have seen that many times the banks have to offer more salary than their CEO to the techie guy, in the sense that if you have these guys, you are in a position to work very strongly. Another issue which I find is that चल रहा है, चलने दो. हम लोग सोचते नहीं है कि किस तरह से चल रहा है. अब ये किस तरह से चलने वाला जो काम है ना, वो नहीं चलने वाला. You will have to ensure that you have proper internal controls and defined policies. हम लोग क्या करते हैं, नॉर्मली किसी बैंक ने कोई पॉलिसी बना ली, उसको कॉपी बना के नाम बदल के अपने यहाँ पे रख दिया. That's not the correct way, because each bank is different, each bank's products are different, the customer base is different. Every bank must have a separately designed policy for their own appetite. When you talk of that, I come to the major subject of the word risk that has now migrated into the systems and control. Reserve Bank of India's entire inspection format has changed, and they are commenting on your risk appetite, risk abilities, risk measurement techniques, risk control techniques. They are commenting on that, and you have to comply. So अगर आपने किसी दूसरे बैंक से वो रिस्क मैनेजमेंट की कॉपी की होगी तो आप लटक सकते हो. You have to devise your own risk policies, and you have to ensure that the days which are coming up would be focusing on absolute data analytics. We are not focusing on MIS. Unless we shift our attention to MIS with the use of AI, it is quite possible to generate and dig into MIS, which is required by the regulator and which is also useful for us to help run and manage the bank very effectively. End of the day, what is the solution? Place good funds for creating a digital infrastructure. Risk management, devise everything. Have all types of policies for all types of risks. All types of risks, you must have action points properly defined. And when you are defining action points, it's extremely necessary that you work internally as to what you are. The beginning of the risk policy, the creation of risk policy is that you understand what you are, you draw down what you are, and then you devise the risk management policies. Is the simple technique. One of the critical aspect of managing or running an urban cooperative bank is the leadership, growth of leadership and succession planning. Very few banks, the urban cooperative banks, are really doing it, and if we are in a position to do that, it's extremely important that we can take the bank forward for another couple of years. And one of the areas which I find is that you must have the appetite to talk to a couple of fintechs for various solutions. You can talk to API suppliers who can give you services to deliver what you need to manage the bank, what you need to run the bank. If we are digital shy, we will not reach the high. That is what the story is. It's extremely important that we keep abreast of all these things. And if you read the couple of circulars issued by Reserve Bank of India, they are running into pages. They are running into pages. And when they modify a particular guideline on a particular subject, we are all a little bit wary. I am going to do a shoot on the gold loan guidelines which are issued by Reserve Bank of India, and you will find that the rest of the things are all fine, but there is one condition, that in the absence of customer opening of a gold packet, we are not used to it. We are not used to it. Now Reserve Bank of India wants to strengthen the entire mechanism, and therefore they have said that your loan agreement should have clauses where you can open the gold packet in the absence of the customer. उसके बारे में डिटेल में मैं अलग वीडियो में बात करूँगा, लेकिन it's extremely important that we are ready to face the challenges. And let me tell you, it is you who have to analyze what is lacking in your bank and focus on that areas where you do not have the competency. Build your own people. That's the only way. And if you think of bringing a CEO from an outside world or outside bank, he is rarely successful. The person who has worked with you for 17-18 years is always better. It's always better. Maybe उसको 4 आना कम आता होगा, लेकिन वो बंदा ऐसा होता है कि तुम्हारी बैंक को जानता है, और अगर वो तुम्हारी बैंक को जानता है तो it's extremely important that your leader is an insider leader. तो दोस्तों, these are the views about what the current position is and what you should be focusing on. अगले संडे फिर मिलेंगे एक नए सब्जेक्ट के साथ. मुझे मालूम है आपको मेरे वीडियोस अच्छे लगते हैं. आप इसको लाइक कीजिएगा, शेयर कीजिएगा, सब्सक्राइब कीजिएगा. आपके पूरे दोस्तों को, बैंकिंग इंडस्ट्री के दोस्तों को इसको शेयर करने के लिए बोलिएगा. थैंक यू सो मच फॉर वॉचिंग. थैंक यू.